trying to look cool, until my water bottle decided to humiliate me in front of everyone. I don't know what got into me that morning. Maybe it was the weather, maybe the music, maybe some delusional burst of confidence. But the second I stepped into the hallway, I felt like the protagonist of a coming-of-age movie. The kind with soft lighting, indie music, and a narrator saying something philosophical like, "This was the day everything changed." Yeah, that kind of vibe. I slid my headphones on, letting the bass thump right behind my eyes. The world blurred into the background as the soundtrack in my head took over. Students moved around me in fast forward, like I was walking at normal speed and everyone else was stuck in time. Lapse mode. Lockers clanged open and shut, shoes squeaked across the tiles, someone dropped a book. But all of that felt muted, softened, distant. It was just me, and the song, and the deeply unnecessary amount of confidence I was channeling. And then there was the water bottle, not just any water bottle. No, I held it like it was a prop in a high-budget energy drink commercial, label facing outward, gripped tight and purposeful, as if someone off-screen was filming a dramatic product shot. The condensation sparkled under the fluorescent lights. I swear it even glowed a little. The bottle wasn't just a bottle in my mind, it was an accessory, a statement, a whole attitude. I walked down the hall with that stupid water bottle like I had been paid to endorse it. My stride matched the beat in my headphones, steady, confident, almost choreographed. I didn't even realize I was slow, walking until someone hurried around me with an annoyed huff, like I was blocking the hallway with my main character energy. But did that stop me? Absolutely not. I kept moving like the hallway was a runway and I was debuting a new version of myself, the mysteriously cool student who drinks water dramatically. Not a great character objectively, but I was committed. I looked at the classroom door ahead of me like it was the entrance to a scene I needed to nail. The lighting above flickered slightly, cinematic, moody, probably accidental, but it added to the moment. For a second, I imagined a camera tracking behind me, gliding smoothly like I was the final shot of a montage. I reached for the doorknob, paused for dramatic effect. Nobody noticed, but I acted like crowds were watching, and then pushed it open. The music in my headphones suddenly felt louder as the door swung inward, like the soundtrack swelling right before the protagonist steps into a major turning point. But instead of a grand reveal, the classroom just looked like a classroom, desks, chairs, people slumped over like they hadn't slept since 2012, the faint smell of markers and teenage existential dread. Still, I walked in with unnecessary swagger, pretending I was entering a studio-lit set. My eyes scanned the room slowly, as if I were calculating the exact position of every character in a movie scene. In reality, I was just trying to avoid eye contact so I didn't trip on someone's backpack. My desk sat near the middle of the room, and I made my way toward it like I was rehearsing a scene. Calm, composed, rehearsed. I slid into my seat with a little flourish. Unneeded, ridiculous, but in my head it was perfectly timed. Then I lifted the water bottle into frame, holding it like a spotlight should have hit it. I tipped my chin up slightly, pretending for just one tiny second that I was so cool, so smooth, so unfazed by the world around me. This was my moment, my dramatic water bottle sip moment, and I had no idea that it was about to go catastrophically wrong. The moment I stepped inside the classroom, the air hit me differently, like walking into a refrigerator that also happened to be full of bored teenagers. The room had that faint smell every classroom has: dry, erase markers, old textbooks, and the ghosts of failed quizzes. A low murmur filled the space, people talking, chairs scraping, someone unwrapping a granola bar with the subtlety of a tornado. But in my head, silence, only the soundtrack in my headphones, something dramatic and way too intense for an average school morning. I kept walking, still holding my water bottle like a celebrity entering a press conference. I probably looked ridiculous, but in the little movie running inside my head, I was untouchable, cool, effortlessly iconic. I scanned the room like I was choosing where to sit in a throne room. Really, I knew exactly where my seat was. It's been the same every day, but the slow scan made me feel like the main character walking into a scene. Light flickered from the window and hit the metal legs of the desks in little silver flashes. My footsteps sounded softer than they actually were, my movements exaggerated by the rhythm pulsing through my headphones. I reached my desk and sat down with the kind of flourish usually reserved for dramatic kings or people who definitely peaked in high school. I leaned back a little, stretched my legs under the desk, and let the world settle around me. Like, yes, finally, the protagonist has entered. Then came the moment I had been building up to in my mind. The sip, the dramatic, casual, slow-motion sip of water, like I'd seen actors do in commercials where everything somehow looks refreshing and important. I pulled out the bottle and held it up, letting the light catch the condensation. It looked cinematic. No, it looked heroic. I tilted it slightly, as if posing for an invisible camera. The cap squeaked faintly as I adjusted my grip, and I thought it sounded cool, like a sound effect added in post-production. I took a breath, preparing for the perfect first sip of the morning. This was my scene, my moment of coolness, my little victory. All I had to do was raise the bottle, sip, and look unbothered by everything in life. I lifted it, tilted it, closed my eyes slightly, going full dramatic mode, and then, crrr-runch, the sound wasn't just loud, it was violently loud. It echoed off the walls like someone had stepped on a plastic container with the force of a truck. The noise tore through my headphones, through the entire room honestly, and for a second I thought the bottle had exploded. My eyes snapped open wide mid-sip. The entire class turned toward me, not gradually, not slowly. They turned in one synchronized group motion like a school of fish reacting to a shark. Time froze. I could feel 30 sets of eyes burning into me. Someone's mouth hung open. Someone else snorted. A girl paused mid-text, her phone halfway to her face. Even the teacher looked up from his desk like the universe had forced him to acknowledge the chaos. I froze, bottle still raised, lips still awkwardly touching the rim, trying to decide if I should continue drinking or just pretend I died. My face heated instantly, my ears felt like they were on fire. I pulled the bottle down slowly, hoping maybe nobody actually heard it, even though the sound probably registered on the Richter scale. Everyone was still staring. I forced a casual smile, the kind of smile that screams, haha, yup. I meant to do that, totally intentional, very cool of me. Inside, I was spiritually collapsing. My inner monologue went from I'm the main character to dear God, delete me from existence in half a second. Still, I told myself, it's fine. One crunch isn't that bad. Just play it off, act natural. You got this. I placed the bottle back on the desk gently, like it contained nitroglycerin. But a second later, the urge hit me. The desperate need to prove it was normal, that the bottle wasn't malfunctioning, that I hadn't just embarrassed myself in front of everyone. All I needed was a second sip. One smooth, quiet, controlled sip, a redemption arc, a chance to reclaim my dignity. So with shaky confidence and the hope of a fool, I reached for the bottle again. For a moment, I just stared at the bottle sitting on my desk like it had personally betrayed me. The entire class slowly drifted back to what they were doing. Well, not completely. A few people kept glancing in my direction like I was a ticking time bomb made of plastic, but I convinced myself I could still fix everything. Redemption is possible, I thought. One quiet sip, that's all I need. They'll forget. Everyone will forget. I took a steadying breath. My heart thumped loudly in my chest, louder than my music. Even the beat in my headphones suddenly felt stressful, like the soundtrack had shifted into suspense mode. I reached for the bottle again, moving with exaggerated care, like a wildlife photographer approaching a dangerous animal. My fingers wrapped around the warm plastic. I squeezed as gently as humanly possible, careful not to trigger another catastrophic crunch. I glanced sideways. A couple of kids were already watching me again. Great, amazing, perfect. Still, I lifted the bottle slowly, trying to make it look normal, chill, casual, like this was just any other ordinary sip of water and not a life or death situation. In my head, everything was slow motion. My hand rising, my wrist tilting, the bottle cap brushing my lip, my brain whispering, please, please, please be quiet this time, and then, with absolutely no warning, crunch, the sound was so much louder, this time it felt personal. Like the bottle waited for the perfect moment to betray me again. I swear the plastic vibrated against my lip. The noise cut through the room like someone smashing a microphone into a wall. Even the people in the back looked up this time. A girl spun around in her seat. Someone else choked on their gum. I froze mid. Sip again. I pulled the bottle away again. I sat there in silent humiliation again, except this time it was worse. A guy across the room, the one who always looks bored no matter what's happening, raised his eyebrows and spoke loud enough for the entire class to hear. Bro is fighting his water bottle. The entire class lost it. Not polite giggles, not little laughs, full-on, uncontrollable shoulders, shaking laughter. Someone tapped their desk like a drum. Someone else actually wheezed. I could hear the girl behind me repeating the line under her breath like it was the funniest thing she'd heard all week. If embarrassment were a physical thing, I would have been buried under the weight of it. I felt heat spreading across my face so fast it was like someone lit a match under my skin. My ears buzzed. My throat tightened. My inner monologue was screaming, don't react, don't do anything stupid, just pretend it's fine, but there was no fine anymore. That ship had sunk, burned, vaporized, and been removed from history. I swallowed the air in my mouth like I'd actually taken the sip, then placed the bottle down very, very carefully. I avoided eye contact with everyone, even the floor tiles, especially the floor tiles. They suddenly felt judgmental. I forced a laugh, a small one, a weak one, the kind of laugh someone does when they're dying inside and want to pretend they're not. It fooled no one. The guy who made the comment leaned back in his chair, satisfied with himself. Another kid repeated it softly like it was a catchphrase. Bro is fighting his water bottle. I stared down at the bottle now sitting innocently on my desk like it hadn't just ruined my entire sense of dignity. The condensation glistened in the light, mocking me. It looked so normal, so harmless, like a lyre. I considered pushing it far, far away. I considered abandoning hydration altogether and living a dry raisin, like life, just to avoid ever touching that cursed bottle again. But the worst part, I still had to put it down properly. I still had to move it. I still had to survive the next 5 seconds without causing another disaster. I wrapped my fingers around it slowly, determined to move it silently. No sudden movements, no squeezing, no drama, just a simple, quiet, dignified placement. I raised it slightly, and that's when everything escalated from embarrassing to catastrophic. If there was ever a moment in my life when the universe could have shown mercy, it was right then. But apparently, the universe clocked out early that day. I stared at the bottle like it was a live explosive. My heartbeat felt louder than the classroom chatter. Every breath I took sounded like it echoed inside my skull. My hands hovered over the bottle, trembling slightly, not from fear, but from the humiliation still simmering in my bloodstream. The class had started to recover from their burst of laughter, but the room still buzzed with leftover giggles, like the embarrassment was hanging in the air long after the initial blast. Some kids had gone back to talking, but with that energy people have when they're still waiting for something to happen again, and apparently they weren't wrong. I needed to put the bottle down, quietly. Softly, peacefully, a simple task for any normal human being. But I wasn't operating at normal, human levels anymore. My dignity was on life support. My hands were untrustworthy. My brain was fried. Still, I gathered myself. Okay, just relax. It's plastic. It's not alive. Just set it down. Slow breath in, slow breath out. I gripped the bottle lightly with my fingertips, adjusting my hold to avoid even the slightest squeeze. The plastic crinkled a microscopic amount, and I flinched like it had screamed. I could feel eyes on me again. Some people pretended not to look. Some didn't bother pretending at all. I tilted my head down, focusing entirely on the movement as if I were performing delicate surgery. My goal was simple. Place the bottle on the desk without making a sound. I started lowering it. Millimeter by millimeter, slow, steady, controlled. My wrist moved like it was guiding a priceless artifact into place. I held my breath entirely. My lungs refused to risk adding any unnecessary movement. The bottle touched the desk surface with the gentlest tap imaginable. Success! For half a second, I felt triumphant. Like I had defeated fate, gravity, and cheap plastic in one beautifully choreographed moment. Maybe I really was the protagonist again. Maybe this chapter of humiliation could close right now and I could move on with life. But nope, the universe wasn't finished with me yet, because the second I let go, the exact second, something went wrong. Maybe my fingers slipped. Maybe the desk wasn't level. Maybe the bottle was sent by evil spirits. All I know is this: the bottle tipped, wobbled, and then began rolling. No, 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 I whispered under my breath. I darted forward to catch it, but I reacted too late. I just ended up poking it like I was giving it encouragement to continue rolling off the desk. The bottle hit the edge, then dropped. Time slowed down like some dramatic war movie moment. I watched helplessly as it fell, end over end, hurtling toward the floor in slow motion. My heart plummeted with it. I reached out uselessly, fingers grasping at air. It hit the tile, bound, scrooge. The sound was unreal. It didn't just echo, it roared. It was like someone had stomped on a giant bag of chips with full emotional force. It bounced once, then again, each bounce accompanied by another impossibly loud crunch, as if it was announcing its presence to all dimensions. The classroom exploded. Kids were laughing so hard some of them fell forward onto their desks. Someone clapped. Someone else pointed at the bottle like it was performing a circus act. The guy who'd roasted me earlier almost slid out of his chair, laughing to the point of wheezing. "Oh my God, bro is losing," someone shouted. "I think the bottle is fighting back," another voice added. My soul left my body, walked out of the classroom, and never returned. I sat there frozen, staring at the bouncing bottle like it had personally plotted against me. The whole room felt like it was spinning, no vibrating, with laughter. Every ounce of confidence I'd walked in with, gone, evaporated, deleted from existence. I forced myself to stand, my movements robotic, and bent down to pick up the cursed bottle. My hand trembled. It crackled one last time, quietly, but still audible enough to reignite a wave of giggles, of course. I straightened up slowly and placed the bottle on my desk with the dead seriousness of someone placing flowers on a grave. I stared at it. It stared back with its little plastic wrinkles like a smug villain. I nodded once, silently accepting defeat. This bottle had won. For a long moment, I just stood there frozen in place, clutching the cursed water bottle like it was some kind of mythical relic that had brought ruin upon my entire bloodline. The classroom was still buzzing with laughter, but now it had softened into that lingering after sound where people keep repeating the joke in smaller, breathless bursts. Bits of it floated around me. Bro's bottle jumped him. I swear it bounced on purpose. No way that was real. Every line made me shrink 1 millimeter further into myself. I dropped into my seat again, moving with the defeated posture of someone who had lived 10 years of embarrassment in the span of 5 minutes. I slumped low, chin nearly resting on the desk. The teacher cleared his throat, trying to bring the class back to order, but even he was covering a smile. My hands rested on the desk, fingers tapping nervously, heart still thudding against my ribs. I stared forward at some invisible point on the wall. If I didn't make eye contact with anyone, maybe I could pretend I wasn't physically present anymore. Maybe I could phase out of existence like a glitching video game character. Then, slowly, reluctantly, my gaze drifted downward to the bottle on my desk. The villain, the traitor, the plastic embodiment of my downfall. It sat there like it was innocence, lightly dented, slightly tilted, covered in tiny scratches from its little battlefield moment with gravity. Condensation sparkled on its surface under the fluorescent lights, giving it a halo effect that made it look smug, mocking, like it was proud of itself. I lifted an eyebrow at it, as if challenging it to do literally anything else that could ruin my dignity further. It didn't move, of course it didn't, but I swear its wrinkles deepened, like it was smirking. Across the room, the guy who'd roasted me earlier finally calmed down enough to speak again. He wiped tears from his eyes and leaned back in his chair dramatically. "Man," he said, "I'm never bringing a water bottle to class again." This was peak entertainment. The class chuckled one more time. I couldn't even blame them. If I had been watching this happen to someone else, I would have been laughing too. I mean, who wouldn't? A slow-motion bottle betrayal, a loud plastic explosion, 3 separate crunches loud enough to traumatize small animals. It was comedy gold, just, not for me. I exhaled and let the humiliation settle. At some point, you stop fighting the embarrassment and just accept it, let it wash over you like a wave, a drowning, humiliating, plastic, crunch, sounding wave. I placed my elbows on the desk and rubbed my eyes. Yep, I muttered quietly to myself, the words slipping out with the weight of someone who had accepted defeat. This is my life now, and weirdly, that made me feel a little better. Acceptance, that's the stage nobody talks about in embarrassing moments. You start off in shock, then denial, then anger, then a desperate attempt to fix the situation, but eventually, you just shrug and go, well, guess this is my character arc now. My shoulders relaxed a little as the teacher finally returned everyone's attention to the assignment on the board. People still glanced at me occasionally, but the intense spotlight I'd felt earlier was fading. Not gone, but fading. I leaned back in my chair and crossed my arms, staring at the bottle like it was an old rival I'd learned to coexist with. Fine, it won. The water bottle won. I could admit that. But I wasn't going to let it end my hydration career. I reached down, picked it up, and placed it on the far corner of my desk out of arm's reach, safe from accidental contact and far from the edge where it might pull another stunt. No more dramatic sips, no more pretending I was in a commercial, no more slow-motion entrances, just quiet survival. From now on, water bottles and I had a truce. I wouldn't squeeze them, and they wouldn't humiliate me in front of 30 witnesses. Fair trade. I folded my arms, stared ahead, and let out a tiny laugh at myself, at the situation, at the absurdity of the entire morning. I had been the main character all right, just not in the kind of story I expected. You'd think most embarrassing moments fade after a day or two, right? People move on, memories dissolve, life resets. Not when it's my life. By the next class, everyone had already turned my water bottle incident into a legendary story. I heard whispers about it in the hallway, someone reenacting the crunch, someone else doing dramatic slow-motion roll-off, the desk simulations. At one point, I walked past 2 kids, and one of them actually said, "Bro, that bottle had a personal vendetta." Great. Wonderful, spectacular, just the legacy I always dreamed of leaving behind. So the next day, when class time rolled around again, I approached my seat with the caution of a man returning to the scene of a crime. I didn't have my headphones in. I wasn't walking in slow motion. I wasn't gripping my water bottle like it was a sponsor deal. In fact, I held it like it was a fragile, unpredictable wild animal. 2 hands, steady, eyes locked on the cap as if staring it down would prevent any crunch-based betrayal. I slipped into my seat as quietly as possible, every movement carefully calculated to avoid drawing attention. I kept the bottle tucked against my chest like a secret government document. But of course, nothing escapes the eyes of students who thrive on chaos. The second I sat down, the guy who roasted me last class turned in his seat and smirked. Well, he said, look who came back armed. A few nearby students snickered. Someone too rose over whispered, round 2. The teacher hadn't even taken attendance yet, and I was already sweating. I set the bottle on the desk like it was a priceless artifact, slowly, with both hands, gently tapping the bottom edge onto the surface so it wouldn't make a sound. I backed away from it like it might explode if I breathed wrong. The class quieted a little as everyone pulled out notebooks. Pens clicked, pages flipped. I could survive this class quietly. I could, probably, at least that's what I hoped. As the teacher droned on about some topic none of us were emotionally prepared for, I found myself getting thirsty. My throat felt dry, like the universe was mocking me. Every swallow felt too loud in my head, like everyone could hear the sound of my dehydration. I tried to ignore it. I tried to pretend I didn't need water. I tried to will moisture into existence with sheer determination, but after 10 minutes I couldn't take it anymore. I reached for the bottle. In the soft glow of classroom lights, the condensation glistened on the plastic. It looked peaceful, innocent, like maybe yesterday had just been a fluke, like maybe it didn't want to ruin my life. I took a deep breath. All right, I could do this. I wrapped my hand around the middle of the bottle, holding it the lightest I possibly could. Barely touching it like it was made of tissue paper, my fingers trembled slightly, not from fear but from the pressure of needing to perfectly execute this one simple action. I began unscrewing the cap. Slowly, carefully, like a bomb squad tech handling a wire they weren't sure would detonate. Each tiny twist felt like a century passing. I could feel eyes drifting onto me again, curious, entertained, waiting for chaos. My heart pounded, halfway twist, three-quarters twist, and then the cap loosened with a soft, blessedly quiet click. No crunch, no betrayal, no echoes. Success. I exhaled through my nose like I'd just finished a high-stakes mission. Some kid 2 seats over leaned forward, elbows on desk, watching with the anticipation of a sports fan waiting for a final play. Now came the real challenge, the sip. I raised the bottle, slowly, gently. Not squeezing too hard, not tilting too fast. My eyes flicked left and right, scanning for witnesses. Then, with the stealth of a ninja stealing priceless treasure, I brought the bottle to my lips and tilted it just enough for a tiny sip. Silence, real, honest, beautiful silence. No crunch, no squeak, no mocking bounce off any surface. I swallowed and lowered the bottle with surgical precision, placing it down like I had trained my entire life for this moment. I looked up and caught a few classmates staring at me, waiting for something dramatic to happen. Nothing happened, nothing at all, and for the first time since the Great Crunch catastrophe, I felt victorious. I leaned back slightly, letting out the tiniest smile. Then I looked directly into the imaginary camera in my head, because of course I'm always imagining one now, and thought, I still bring water, but I open it like I'm defusing a bomb, fade to black.